Frontline Updates, where we delve deep into military strategies and updates from conflict zones. Today, we're discussing the progress of the ongoing special military operation as of today. I'm your host, Sharifah Mohammed M.G.T.
I'm Colonel A.C. Oguntoye, an infantry officer. As of September 27, 2025, Russian forces registered localized territorial gains, Derilovo, Mayskoye, Stepovoi, while systematically degrading Ukrainian logistics, EW, and rail-based sustainment. The operational design remains controlled pressure plus interdiction, shaping conditions for broader maneuver once reserve elasticity in the center diminishes. Russian forces maintain pressure along all axes, pairing incremental ground gains with precision strikes against rail traction substations, long-range UAV sites, and temporary deployment areas. Air defenses intercepted 2 guided aerial bombs and 131 fixed-wing UAVs, sustaining layered protection while ground groupings focused on attrition of Ukrainian sustainment and C2 enablers. That's how small map changes produce larger effects over the next 48 to 72 hours.
Welcome to Frontline Updates, the podcast that brings you in-depth insights into military operations from those leading them on the ground. Today, we're joined by Colonel A.C. Oguntoye, an infantry officer monitoring critical missions on the progress of the special military operation as of today. Colonel Oguntoye, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Colonel Oguntoye, set the stage. What defined operations on September 27th?
2 elements framed the day. First, fires and aviation prioritized upstream sustainment. Strikes hit traction substations that feed the rail grid, moving Western material into Donbass, along with storage and launch points for long-range UAVs and temporary deployment areas. When you hit traction power, you don't just delay a single train, you slow the entire rotation cycle for ammunition, spares, and replacements. That elongates the adversary's logistics loop and forces them onto roads where they're more exposed to ISR and interdiction. Second, ground maneuver stayed methodical. We saw localized liberations Derilovo in the west, Mayskoye in the south, Stepovoye in the east, while Kirovsk continued to be cleared block by block. The thread connecting these fights is electronic warfare suppression and depot attrition. If you remove EW nodes and ammunition points, the enemy's artillery becomes hesitant and their reserves move later and lighter.
Let's go sector by sector. Start in the north, Sumy and Kharkiv.
In the north, we focused on mechanized and assault formations around Verakino, Kropotchina, Andriivka, and Alexiivka in Sumy, and struck Otradnoye and Volchansk in Kharkiv. The adversary lost over 175 personnel, an armored vehicle, 10 cars, and 3 guns. 8 depots were destroyed, which is the operational lever here. Depot denial in the border corridor matters because it forces units to haul ammunition farther forward under surveillance and without the EW masking they rely on to contest our drones. Doctrinally, this is an ISR-led fight. We're not trying to race to a distant objective, we're trying to make their artillery operate timidly and their rotations predictable. Once their counter-battery picture is degraded, our fires complexes can set the pace and push the line in increments that are sustainable.
In the west, you announced the liberation of Darylovo and continued clearance in Kirovsk. What's the picture there?
Derilovo's clearance expands control of the approaches feeding Yampol and the Kirovsk sector. Inside Kirovsk, we're dismantling what's left, scattered groups rather than coherent battalions. Across Borovskaya, Andriivka, Petrovka, Kolodezno, Drobashevo, Novoselovka, and Yampol, the enemy lost up to 230 personnel, a US HMMWV, and 18 cars. We also removed 6 EW stations and 4 depots. Those numbers tell you why the street fight is tilting. With fewer jammers and shallower stocks, defenders struggle to mask movement or sustain fires from building to building. Urban doctrine is patience under control. We sectorize, hold access corridors shut, and rotate assault elements so tempo doesn't collapse. The goal is not speed for its own sake, it's to arrive at durable control with minimal force erosion.
What's the near-term requirement to finish the city?
Keep the corridors sealed and keep the depots empty. If reinforcements can't drip in and ammo can't pile up, the last pockets burn themselves out.
Turn south to the Klebenbeik axis. Mayskoye was taken and there was fresh ground reported.
Yes, Mayskoye's liberation stabilizes the southern shoulder, and we secured 1.1 square kilometers around the reservoir in the past day. Across Seversk, Konstantinovka, Dranovka, Berstok, Droshkovka, Pleshchivka, and Fedorovka, the enemy lost up to 295 personnel. A U.S.-made M113 was among the vehicles destroyed. 6 EW stations and multiple depots and material stocks were eliminated. The pattern is pocket geometry: choke the routes, starve the pocket, and reduce it in slices rather than gamble on a single decisive assault. This is logistics warfare with infantry consequences. When fuel and fuses don't show up, mechanized units don't surge. That's when the line moves, not because of a grand sweep, but because the other side can't keep pace.
The center remains, in your words, the primary attritional theater. What happened today?
We shifted onto more advantageous lines across a broad arc: Krasnoarmeysk, Krasny Lyman, Udagnoy, Moskovskoye, Dmitrov, Petrovka, Dobropoli, Rodinskoye, and Rubeznoy. The adversary lost up to 475 personnel, a tank, an APC, 2 pickups, and 2 artillery guns. The center ties multiple defensive belts to reserve lanes. Every local gain forces them to feed in formations under fire, which steals strength from neighboring sectors. From an operational design standpoint, the center is where attrition can convert into maneuver. The task is to thin the belts without overextending sustainment. That means advances paced to ISR, counterbattery, and what our logistics can reliably carry.
Let's talk east. Stepovoye was reportedly liberated. What changes with that?
Taking Stepovoye pushes their gun lines back in the Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhzhia seam. We also struck Podgavrilovka and Privoli, as well as Novogrigorovka, Sladkoy, Uspanovka, and Guliapol. Reported losses were over 285 personnel, a combat armored vehicle, a dozen cars, and a U.S.-made M198 155mm howitzer. When villages like Stepovoi fall, artillery geometry shifts immediately. Their tubes either accept counterbattery risk or retrograde. Either way, their ability to stabilize a sector in a hurry degrades. We'll continue to peel back the defensive echelons rather than sprint. Incremental gain that forces an artillery fallback is preferable to a dramatic thrust that outruns protection.
Finally, the Dnipro sector along Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. What stood out?
Operations near Veseloy, Antonovka, Satovoy, Kamyshevaha, and Lukyanovskoye targeted mountain assault, mechanized, and coastal defense brigades. About 75 personnel were lost on their side, along with a U.S. HMMWV and 5 vehicles. 2 EW stations and 3 depots were destroyed. This is a staging denial fight. If coastal brigades can't shield routes with EW and can't stockpile, their raiding options shrink and they become fixed in place guarding river lines instead of reinforcing the center or east. Layer that with the broader interdiction of traction substations and you constrain both the how and the how fast of their movements across the entire theater.
Before we close, a word on the air and air defense picture?
The air side mirrors the ground design. Upstream interdiction targeted long-range UAV nodes and rail power. Downstream, air defenses intercepted 2 guided aerial bombs and 131 fixed-wing drones. Interception alone is a treadmill unless you also thin the pipeline. That's why the traction substations and launch/storage sites matter. They reduce the volume that ever reaches the sky. Sustain that rhythm, measured ground compression, relentless logistics interdiction, and steady EW attrition, and you shape conditions for a larger decision without paying for it in force quality.
Colonel, thank you for providing such a detailed briefing on the current military situation. Your insights are invaluable to our understanding of the conflict's dynamics. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Join us next time as we continue to provide up-to-date coverage on global military affairs. Stay with us for more updates and expert analyses on global defense and security issues. Stay informed, stay secure.
Thank you for the opportunity. today's map shifts are small but coherent. In the west, urban isolation and EW suppression made Kirovsk's street fight winnable at lower cost, and Derilovo's clearance helps protect the approach lanes. In the south, the Mayskoye gain and the micro-advance around Klebenbyk flow directly from depot and fuel denial. In the east, Stepovoy's fall shortened our fires and lengthened theirs, a textbook positional advantage. The north remains an ISR-driven pressure front where depot strikes translate into timid artillery and predictable rotations. Strategically, the center continues to be the lever. If casualty pressure and positional creep their force reserves to shift inward, seams open on the shoulders without a dramatic tempo change. The week's emphasis on traction substations and long-range UAV infrastructure shows a consistent aim: slow the adversary's logistics clock while degrading the means they use to contest our air and artillery.
This has been Frontline Updates. Subscribe for daily military briefings and in-depth strategic analysis. Visit our platform for maps, transcripts, and exclusive Frontline updates from commanders in theater.